Once upon a time, a beginner to needle felting watched how easy it was to needle felt, and she thought,
I could do that.
so she grabbed some wool and she stabbed and stabbed, but it didn't magically transform into an owl. She thought to herself,
Maybe this craft isn't for me.
but along came a good white witch who showed her that her phone was misleading her with a special type of editing witchcraft, and that with some needle felting tips and techniques, she too could live happily ever after in the land of needle felting. And in this video, I'm going to reveal what mistakes she made and give you some essential needle felting tips and techniques so that you don't give up on needle felting and can enjoy this amazing craft. And you'll want to watch to the end where I give you tips on shaping that aren't mentioned very often, but I believe are essential to getting your shaping right. So let's see where she went wrong. Well, the first needle felting mistake I want to point out is that she didn't stab it for long enough. To give you an idea of how long to stab the wool to get it firm enough, throughout this video I'm going to show you footage of me needle felting some Jacob carded wool to make a small egg shape for the body of an owl. This will be playing at the actual speed I usually work. I've only edited out bits where I've stopped to have a break or a cup of tea. I'll come back to this at the end to let you know how many minutes I've stabbed it for and show you how firm the body is. But if your project is still this soft and your fingers sink right in, you've definitely not stabbed it enough. This will not only make it hard for it to stand up, but it will also be really difficult to felt the eyes and the other face details onto him. And if you do try to felt the eyes onto him when he's really soft, it could change the shape of the body and make him flat like this.
What do you mean I'm flat?
Well...
I don't look flat to me.
No, of course you, yeah. Anyway, moving on. Don't forget to watch the end where I'll also tell you how long this, owl was felted for. The second mistake she made was she rolled the wool up very loosely. This means she was starting with a very soft piece of wool, which would make stabbing it into shape much harder, and it will take a lot more stabs. Some felters just scrunch up their wool and start stabbing. This would probably work if using carded wool as I am here, but I find this method makes it hard to shape the wool and it will take you longer to get it firm, whereas rolling it as tightly as you can will give you a head start. So if you do use carded wool, I would also roll it tightly into roughly the same shape as I'm trying to achieve. So if I'm making a ball, make sure it's not a very wide piece of wool and gather in the edges, or if it's an egg shape or cylinder, tear a slightly wider piece of wool to roll. Basically, make sure the width is about the height you want your felted piece to be, and roll it up really firmly, gathering the sides in. Please don't forget to click the like button if you're enjoying this content. By doing this, you'll help other needle felters find this video. As you can see here, it's already a bit firm because it's been rolled so tightly. The third mistake is that she's using a fine merino roving or tops wool to make the initial shape. By the way, this is roving or tops wool. You can tell because it has long straight strands. And this is carded wool, which looks more fuzzy or curly, and it has quite short strands. You can use merino roving or tops, but I found in my video on when to stop stabbing that you are more likely to get a bumpy finish unless you stab it with the right needles an awful lot. I'm talking 4,000 times at least. Instead, I suggest that you always start with a thicker carded wool such as Corriedale or Jacob wool, as I'm using here. These are coarse carded core wools. That's a lot of C's. I'll put links in the description below to some wools that I've used. This leads on to the next mistake she made, and my next tip, which is to make sure you're using the best needle for the wool that you're using. Here she was using fine merino roving or tops wool and a thick 36 gauge triangular needle. This will actually take longer than if she was using a fine 40 gauge triangular needle. I discovered this during my video on when to stop stabbing, where I counted the number of stabs it took and experimented with different needles and wools. But I find the easiest way to shape the base is to use thicker coarse wool and a thicker needle such as a 36 or a 38 gauge triangular needle. This will take less stabs to get the wool firm. Then you can coat this felted shape with whatever coloured merino roving or tops or coloured carded wool that you have, using a finer 40 gauge triangular needle. I find that this will take less stabs to get it firm, and it will give you a nice smooth, less fuzzy and less bumpy finish. As Benjamin Franklin said, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. As you saw, if you just jump in and start felting a shape without having an idea of what shape you're trying to achieve, it can go a bit wrong.
Hey, what you saying about me?
Nothing. Anyway, of course, once you're an experienced needle felting addict, enthusiast, you can probably pick up some wool and get straight into making something off the top of your head. But I find that if you want to needle felt a particular animal or person, it always turns out better if I either have a reference picture on my phone or I've roughly drawn out the size and shape of the project I want to create. Another problem you might have encountered is getting the right amount of wool to make the core shape of your project. Our poor beginner to needle felting didn't add any more wool, she just stabbed and hoped for the best. But if after a while you notice that it's not the right size and shape, don't be hard on yourself. It's very difficult to judge how much wool you'll need, but fortunately you can easily add more after you've needle felted your first roll of wool. In fact, I find it best to start with less wool than you think you'll need, then check your project against the drawing once it's fairly firm, and if it's not wide enough, take a strip of the same wool and wrap it around the area you want to build up. In fact, you might need to do this more than once until you get it the right size. And lastly, I have two things that are really important when shaping wool, and they are tips that not many needle felters explain. You may have noticed that when she was stabbing this wool, she was stabbing straight down into one side, then turning it over and stabbing the other side. This will make a very flat owl. Firstly, she should have been making sure she rotated the wool very gradually and stab it evenly as you rotate it, making sure you stab in the direction you want the wool to go. In other words, the angle of your needle is very important and will help you shape the wool. So here I'm stabbing one of the ends inwards towards the centre and changing the angle of my needle as I go, from stabbing the side round to stabbing the end. This will give a nice rounded shape to the head. Then to create a nice flat base for it to stand on, I've stabbed in one direction towards the centre, keeping my needle 90 degrees to the wool. By the way, when I say stab at an angle, I don't mean for you to move your needle around once it's in the wool, as this will possibly break your needle. But it is okay to stab the wool at an angle, as long as you pull your needle out the same direction as it went into the wool. Secondly, when you're stabbing, look for any raised bumps and aim for those. Imagine you are shaping clay with the end of a pencil. I'm gently prodding the raised lumps on the clay and gradually it becomes a lot smoother. It's the same with wool. Try to aim for the raised bumps of wool, or if there's a hole or dip, then stab around the hole. This will compact the wool around the hole and will help smooth that area out. So let's have a look at how I'm getting on with my real-time footage of me shaping the body for the owl. It's taken me 6 minutes to get to this stage. After about 5 minutes it was this firm, still a bit too soft for my liking. I continued to felt it and added more wool to make it wider and the right size, and stabbed it for a total of 43 minutes. It was then firm enough and the right shape. So this craft does require some patience, but it can be really relaxing to do. As you can see, it's a lot firmer than, well, I'm not sure what to call him.
Hey, I can still hear you know.
And anyway, he was felted for 16 minutes and he was still really soft.
Who you calling soft?
There's just one more thing you'll need to master to make your needle felted items look great, and that's knowing how to get a lovely smooth finish without any fuzz. And in this video I don't just show you one technique, I investigate lots of different methods and tell you the secret to a smooth finish that'll make your items look amazing. And don't forget to subscribe and click the bell to see how I went from this to this. Thanks for watching.